Hello, MPA families, students, if you're on. It's Mr. Brian. Thanks for joining us tonight. We got lots to talk about, so let's get started. Next, just want to remind you that we do have the chat open for the question and answer. I have Miss Erin here. She's going to help us out. She's going to collect questions as we go. And then, of course, Mr. Brandon here, one of our board members, is running all the tech behind the scenes. So I got a good crew around us. And we'll also put this up, on the MPA website when it's all said and done. So thanks for joining. I don't know about your summer, but my summer feels like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at Disneyland. My son, who's 28, he'd love that ride. We go Disneyland in the summer, and all he wanted to ride was that. I'm like, really? We got Matterhorn, we got all this. Well, that's what my summer feels like, even though I couldn't get to Disneyland this summer. It's just every Zoom that pops up is kind of like that pop out in the ride. I didn't really find it all that thrilling, but he loved it. That was the point. And I love my job. That's the point. I've done all these Zooms just to educate myself so I can be as prepared as I can to answer your questions tonight. So Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, that seems like the summer to me. So here we go. MPA is a special place. The staff is a special, they're special all the way around. That's why I joined the crew. Parents, you're special too, because you've made a choice, you want to be here, and the pandemic messed everything up. So we're going to try to figure this out together. You see some pictures here. This is just people working over the summer. We're out social distancing in parks so we can meet, talk, share, vent, plan, all kinds of crazy things. The one picture in the classroom, I kind of cut it off, but we've been inside rooms trying to figure out the best way to make our rooms safe for everybody involved. So parents, we can't thank you enough. You've had a wild ride yourself. You've been with your kiddos since March, and we have not, only remotely. And we can't thank you enough. We empathize totally because we got into this because school is family. We build these little communities inside these schools, and we know it's been difficult trying to juggle your life, work, all the political confusion, believe me, what's right, what's wrong, what's fact, what's not. But you're doing it. You're here tonight, and we're going to try to do this as best we can with grace and courtesy. That's our mantra around here. It's Montessori to the heart, and we can do a pandemic with grace and courtesy. So let's give this a shot. I write short little stories for the staff, just to keep us grounded. And I have to be honest, I was a little burned out by about end of June because I kind of work a good portion of the year, most of the year round. And I just had to get away for a little bit. Love the paddleboard. Been on it a lot when I can. And it's amazing that when you take a little break, sometimes words come to you. Not the best writer, not saying that, but it's the meaning behind it. And so this is what I shared with the staff on Monday, and I'll read it to you. Who's freaking out? I've been hearing stories. One of the mindsets we need to have moving forward is a loose, tight mindset or thinking. This type of mindset helps us identify what is loose. Let's see, I got to move my screen around. There we go. Or things that we need to be flexible with in our thinking. We determine what is loose by asking, what level of control do I have over blank? For example, we have very little control over health policy for schools. So we need to remain mentally and emotionally flexible by spending very little time thinking or wishing for fantasy type results or scenarios. This is called the rabbit hole. We ask ourselves, what do I have control over? And we put our focus on what is tight or the actions we can pour our efforts into. For me, I have control over listening, reading policy, double checking facts with others, summarizing the next steps. It's not super exciting work, but it keeps me out of the rabbit hole. By using this balanced approach, I'm being my best self for you and for me. Let's focus on being loose and tight. I actually taught my fourth graders this, and I would just demonstrate, things that we need to be flexible of. We would just identify it, and I'd balance something in my hand, and if it stayed balanced, great. But the minute I move and it drops, I'm okay with it. I'm flexible, because it's something that I don't need to wrap myself around, but something that is so valuable, so important, we need to grasp as tight. And so even when I move my hand, it stays tight. That's called focus. And so I would talk to my students about what's in our control, what's not in our control. Guess what? That lesson applies for the rest of life. And it's just where we're at. It's such a crazy world of information, and a lot of the anxiety is based on being overwhelmed. And so I just do my best to capture thoughts, use it as lead-ins, and help coach us along. Mainly I do it for me, because I need grounding, because I need to be the best leader I can during this pandemic. So here we go. Tonight, we're just going to give you some updates. We're in the process of still pushing towards the future. The board has been steadfast, MPA's board, by the way, about really still during the pandemic, looking at this north property, or what we call the church over here, and really looking at expanding middle school and high school, and doing it in a way that helps us financially at the worst possible time. There is silver lining and all that. It's been a lot of work, but I appreciate their vision and where we're going. We have a retreat coming up as a board, and we're going to start looking at the strategic things for the year, things like that. Hiring, we have everybody hired. We will send out more information. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. Ms. Veronica and I are putting together a newsletter, so we'll update you on a lot of where we're at with hiring, and other things. And I'm sure the board will make more announcements coming, but I'm excited for the future. There's things, there's hope. We're still moving forward. We did not collapse everything and just focus on the pandemic. Life moves on, and I'm glad that we have other things to focus on, and also give parents hope that someday we might have a 7th and 8th grade, or we have other options in the homeschool program, and also have an extension to our beautiful campus here. So we're moving on, and I'm glad for that. The heart of tonight is really about how we're going to start the building up in this new time. So we're really going to talk about what I know to this date, what we have control over, what we don't have control over, your choices as parents. That's very important in this. There's a lot of rumblings out there that schools may start in remote. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we have question and answer, not only a little bit along the way, but at the end. So thanks, parents. Appreciate that. Let's keep moving. The goal is, we're Montessori, and we really want back to in-person learning, despite what the risk is. There's risk in everything, but right now it's an elevated risk, and we kind of have to sort all that out. But as we know, and I really don't want a whole nother year of remote learning. That would push us into, we started last March, right? If we had to do another whole year of remote learning, it pushes us into 15 months of this remote situation. And some families may choose that. And I'm not talking people out of that. I'm just saying that's a long time to be away social, emotionally. School's more than just academics. School is something that brings a lot of joy to kids. It brings joy to adults. Parents need their time. Especially you need your time. You got livelihoods to maintain. And can we do this in a safe way? Can we get kids in the building with staff who are ready and help you move your life forward as well? So that's our goal. I mean, plus we all know you're here from Montessori, that's going to work best in person. And so that's our goal. That's why the staff, even though they're technically not supposed to be here or listening to me in meetings, but they're here anyway. That's just the dedication. I try to shoo them away, it doesn't really work. I get it because I'm one of them. And we just, if we can, within the parameters that we have, we're going to open school. We are public servants. Yes, we adhere to the governor. Yes, we adhere to policy. We can interpret certain things we can't. But I'm here and our staff is here to serve in the best capacity. And they're a talented bunch of people and they really want to have kids back in the building and serve them remotely too. We're offering both. So let's keep moving. Some of the things that are kind of swirling around out there is it's really not traditional in the sense that school would be the same as last year, but it's in the sense of we can open the doors at a capacity that looks almost full. Okay, when I say almost, I really don't want to have classes over 25 if we can, even though we have some classes that have 27, 28 on the roster. But we already know there's some parents that are picking remote anyway, and that lowers that number. We will offer remote learning to K-6. We know it really does not work for preschool. We dabbled with it, and preschool licensing is a whole different world, and preschools have been running really since April in a lot of different locations. So there's a lot of protocols and safety measures that preschool has done that we're learning from because they've been facing it, and it really seems to be working. And so we know that remote really is for K and up because here preschool is a tuition-based program and we can't really charge for tuition for a kiddo to be home. So that's why we didn't take parents' money last year for tuition when we closed down. So we're going to try to open at some kind of full capacity if the world works out right here. Hybrids really on hold. Hybrids that maybe come for 2 days, 3 days off, but doing remote learning, or it could have been come for 5 days, 1 week, off the next. There's a bunch of different models. And really at the elementary, that for me and for a lot of schools and even Jeffco, that's really kind of a last resort model. And the reason why is if we can go 5 days a week, that cohort stays together and it's a much healthier situation than going back and forth, because we can't guarantee what people are doing out in the world and we don't know what comes in if they're not coming on a regular basis. And so consistency, 5 days a week seems to be the better model that we've learned from watching preschools and other programs. Consistency keeps everybody safer if we can offer that model. So hybrid's really on hold. The world's probably going to be one or the two. We're kind of open or we're closed and we're doing remote. So one thing that parents, you need to understand that is if we wind up closing down, we may, if we're allowed to, keep the preschool, and kinders would have the choice of either being remote or attending here. Just keep our preschool open and keep that going because that, again, that model has worked in the worst of times because the numbers are small and there's a lot of protocols involved. And so that's a strong possibility. Other districts, you may have heard DPS is going to do a remote start and then start, I believe, September 8th in person. I'm hearing rumors other districts may jump on board. I have not heard anything from Jeffco. However, I do have several meetings tomorrow. So this stuff changes by the hour. Again, Mr. Toad's wild ride, right? As a charter, if we have health guidelines that allow us to be open, we can set our own calendar here. So that is something I would strongly talk to our MPA board with, and I would talk with our staff with. And even if Jeffco does do a delayed start, but health policy wise, we could open on the 24th and everyone gives the green thumbs up here, I think we would do that. It just doesn't make any sense to be closed probably at some of the lowest rates we're going to see for quite a while. As you all know, flu season's coming up in October. So it's really good practice for us to say hi to the kids, get them back into school, those that want to be here, figure out our routines. How do we do this job in this new world? We can't do that in remote. You have to try it live. And so I'd love to get into the building and do that. In fact, I called Dr. Gary about that, and he's consulting at another charter school here in the area, and he had the same belief. If we can get in the buildings, give it a run, work out our systems, figure out the safest way to do it, then we have some muscle memory in how to reopen if we ever get closed down again. So that our intention is really to pay real close attention to what MPA can and can't do as a charter school going forward. Okay. So here's the updates. Last time I talked to you in June, we talked a lot about the 6-foot distancing. Well, we have problems with that. Our rooms are only so big. The most we could get in a room was somewhere between 15 and 18, depending on the classroom. Well, since then, the state has really backed off on social distancing, especially for elementaries. And it's really about the strength of a cohort. So the cohort is really about keeping students in the same group all day long. So, which is tough. As I said before, this means also that group has to play with each other on the playground. They can't commingle with other classes out on the playground. They can't commingle, and we can't do like assemblies in the gym, and we can't do 2 classes together in PE like we used to do, and a bunch of different things. So that group has got to stay that group. Okay. The next thing is really about increased ventilation. How can we put more airflow through the building? I grew up in Arizona. My parents still live there. They're seniors. They're up in their years. This is very serious to them. Everyone thought back in April the virus would die off in those hot state climates. Well, I grew up there. The reason I moved to Colorado is I moved the summer we had over 20 days of 120 degrees. What do you do when it's 115? You go inside. So all the Sunbelt states are fighting this problem of air conditioning, recirculating the virus. And so one of the things that we're looking at strongly is how to open up the building in a safe way, open up windows, maybe upgrade, look at ways to push our HVAC system. I think it's going to cost us a little bit more money, but we're going to be pushing air all the time. We're going to have to take frequent breaks with kids, get them outside, bring them back in. Yes, we want to keep our doors closed and stuff, but we're just going to have to break up our routines to get more fresh air into the building when we can. And that seems, when you do that, that seems to help control or mitigate this virus. And luckily, being in Colorado, obviously it'll be hot in August. That might be a reason to push back our start. We'll watch the weather, we'll talk as a board, we'll watch health policy. But once we get into September, yes, there's some hot days. October, much better. We're really going to have to ventilate the building year round as best we can. So you notice how this stuff has been changing since the criteria I gave a month ago, because we're learning as we go. So I really do hope the Sunbelt states, kind of start figuring this out, because it's out there. I talk to my dad all the time, and he's a smart man, but it's really about good ventilation. Masks, let's get into it. This is a hot topic. As you know, Governor Polis said, hey, wear a mask. That's mandatory. Staff are going to have to. Now, does that mean all day? No. If you can distance yourself in your class, you can pull it down and talk. We also have, the visors, which is not a replacement for a mask, but it does help. You gotta get some air. You can't wear a mask all day. It's really taxing. It's exhausting work. And so it's really about the distance then. Can you pull yourself away and talk to your class, or pull yourself away, talk to a kiddo in a safe way without a mask? Outside, yeah, everyone can take their masks off except adults, okay? Adults really need to keep it on as much as they can unless they can get enough space around them, okay? This is the other thing. I'm going to jump down one bullet here as I'm talking about adults. One of the change in the policies is really minimizing the amount of adult to adult contact during the school day, because all the data is showing adults are giving it more to adults than the data is really not there as much. How much kids are giving it to adults or adults giving it to kids seems pretty weak in the data set. But adult to adult is the concern. And staff like me, that's getting up there in the years, we take that seriously. And we just need to minimize that. So we already have 2 adults in the room with that cohort. We really don't want other adults just coming and going from that room, because every time a foreign type person comes into that room, they're bringing something with them possibly, okay? So it's just a safety control. For the first time in my life, I've had to tell adults to stay away from each other. It's kind of strange. So we need to minimize that. We need to minimize how many specialty teachers come into rooms, things like that. And so we're going to work on that. Again, anything that we can do that keeps staff safe, students safe, is a good thing here. The latest piece on children and masks is really, they're kind of saying, because the data sets, kids 10 and over are mandatory. Us being in a cohort and having some of our 5th and 6th graders are slightly older than 10, some could be 11, some could be 12, depending on when their birthdays come. We're going to be consulting. Our health consultant group is Children's Hospital. Yes, we listen to Jeffco County Health. Yes, we listen to Jeffco Public Schools advice, but we pay and we get our healthcare service through Children's. And so we have more information coming on that. I'm still obviously trying to figure out the best balance in that kind of mandate. The other thing that came out too is really children under 10, masks are encouraged. Obviously, they don't work well on 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. So our preschool and primary group will have ways of talking to parents about that. But as we know, that the mask is a tough gig there. Some parents may want that on their kiddo as much as possible. Great. Others are like, if they're that little, probably not going to work. It's the gray zone in between. This is where it gets a little dicey. What about 1st graders all the way up to 5th grade, 6th grade? Well, when kids are working, and remember they dropped the 6-foot distancing. They didn't really drop it. They just say, try to do it if you can. Most of our kiddos, I went back and looked at photos from kids working in the rooms last year. Because that's why I joined this place. Students know how to do work here. These teachers teach them this independence. And they already naturally in the school really kind of separate themselves by 3 to 6 feet pretty well. The big thing is when kids are working, and as long as they're not face to face, that mask doesn't have to be on. It's good practice, but it doesn't have to be on. And like we said, it's a long 7-hour day. They're going to need to take breaks from the mask. So when they're working and they're doing their Montessori work and they're properly spaced and the teacher and the assistant got it all dialed in, to me, it's really a non-issue at that point. Kids are being kids, kids are doing the work. The adults got to be the safest one in the room. They can't forget the protocols because they're the highest risk category. I can't have teachers getting COVID because Montessori teachers are unicorns. Um, so it's the adults who have to remember the most here. And so we have to give kids grace and courtesy in this. It's going to take a while to figure out how to use a mask. Um, Really, like when things bunch up is when it happens. Like, hey, I got to go get a drink of water, and I got to really get close to someone who might be at the microwave heating up their lunch. Pop up the mask, you know, or move aside. I guess you can't get a drink of water with a mask on. But the point is, if you're crossing close to people, do the best you can, right? And that's how we're going to approach this. We understand their age. We understand adults got to be the most responsible in the room. The grace and courtesy and the teaching and the modeling comes from the adult on how we can properly use that. We're not going to admonish, we're not going to shame kids over this mask issue. But it is good practice, especially the older the kids get. It's just going to be the expectation that they can do a better job the older they are. And it's really about, if I was a teacher again, and knowing my health history, my students would rally. We would talk about how to use it, when not to use it, what's good for me, what's good for them. And we would just figure it out as our group. And I'll give you an example. I had to go in for hernia surgery a couple years ago when I was back teaching. Wow, my kids, I only missed 3 days of school, but I came back. They really had figured out how much I should be carrying. How should I be moving chairs? The kids are amazing. They're the most empathetic and they're most understanding and intuitive in this situation. And so if it is important that the teacher is a veteran here and they're a high risk category, it's not scaring kids. It's about becoming a family. It's about doing things together and about protecting each other. So kids will rally if we do it in the right way. And we can. We're figuring out the Montessori approach to COVID. So I know parents, it's tough. You want to know exactly how many minutes might the kid be wearing a mask. I really can't tell you that. We have very long blocks of time, which are going to need to be interrupted more this year because of getting fresh air, getting out of the building, open up these doors, go out and take a little nature break, come back in. So it's not going to be quite the same, these long 2-3 hour blocks that the kids are used to, because we just want to keep recirculating the air. And we also understand we're stuck in a cohort. So we need a little bit more movement. And we will figure it out. If you have questions, it's something that I can work on it with you. But masks are part of the deal. To what extent, we're still getting advice from children's, and we will keep you updated. But we really have to keep not only children safe, but the staff safe, because the numbers show the older the staff member, the higher the risk. So we really want to keep the building open because our staff is healthy in here. Okay. Hand washing. I've learned I have to use lotion now because I wash my hands so much. So same thing. Kids are adaptable, and it's really I saw good practice of that before we even left in March. Health screenings. CDE, Jeffco are really talking more about these health checks out in front of schools are going to happen. Children's is really saying that we can do that a different way. We can have maybe parents self-screen. So I'm not promising one or the other right now. But if we're able to do our way, and we have our health advisors from children saying, put it on parents, and not having to take temperatures out front with temperature guns and having every kid stop and taking an hour to get in school, I would go that way. Because parents, you know your kids best. You know how they're feeling. Should they go to school or not? So we'll guide you through that. What would be just that quick morning self-screening? Obviously, we're going to have a protocol for our staff, make sure our staff is healthy. If they're not, nope, they're going home. So we will do our part. And I love the partnership of parents doing their part. So that's kind of where we're at. That's actually a shift from my staff meeting this morning, just because of information rolls in. Remember, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride rolls in, and we just make subtle shifts here. And I like this a lot better than what I told the staff this morning. So we're working on it. Again, this is all in flux, but I think that would work best for parents as well. And again, I get away from the stigma of these health screenings as much as we can. Okay, so I can answer more questions on that as we go along or at the end. Really, we've talked a lot about this. The biggest thing we're trying to do is not cross mingle kids, keep our environments clean, wear masks when we can, especially adults. Okay. And stay together in cohorts and ventilate. I mean, it's just, we got to make this as simple as possible. Otherwise, it's just going to drive us all crazy. So that's my way of simplifying it. And I think it fits in with what districts and the experts are saying. Here's what we're thinking in the school. Here's an example of a class that we're just looking at. We're just trying to open up the space as much as possible. Remember, a lot of kids do work on mats here. As the older they get, that kind of reduces, but still, they're used to being on the floor. We're looking at different ways of replacing the cloth mats with other mats that we can wipe down and just keep with the student, right? No, we're trying to minimize shared stuff. So we're revamping everything. We're opening up spaces. We'll probably have to rent a storage unit just so if we got too many bookcases or things like that. We just want to give as much open air and open space as possible so that kids can do their work, okay? Again, like I said, just not facing each other, offset a little bit. For kids who are for families that pick the remote version, I'm gonna try to have, I'm working on it. Remember, we're in a budget crisis too, but I'd love to have dedicated remote staff, you know, 1 or 2 teachers that cater to that, because our data's looking at, last I checked, probably about 80% of our parents want in, maybe 20% remote. So when you start doing the math, you need a couple teachers there. We'll see after tonight and how the world progresses going forward. The number of in could surge, or it could go the other way. But we also want to have some inclusion activities. So if a class is doing a class meeting, we want to be able to have some kind of a webcam or something that could help. Now, the rules around streaming, it's pretty clear. You can't really show students intentionally. It's really about showing the teacher and showing the content. So if you're demonstrating a math lesson, for example, you just want to show that lesson, okay, the content. So we want some kind of snippets of how the classroom's going to those remote learners at these dedicated times so that they can check in with their class and do different things. It makes teachers nervous. It does, you know, anytime but we're not live streaming the whole day. That's not remote learning, okay? So it would be, you know, there's your workload. Here's a digital platform that to help manage that workload. One of the things that even Mr. Brandon on here is helping us with is how can we reproduce Montessori materials that would go home to the families that we can do on an affordable level. Because remember, if you've probably seen the stuff in the classroom is very specialized and it's very expensive. It's very hard for us to send any kind of those Montessori materials home, but what could we reproduce in the 3D printing world that makes the Montessori piece at home? And that either could be done, the student could learn that lesson on their own and just do it themselves, depending on their age, or their parent can help them, or the remote person might check in and say, hey, you got your materials in front of you, let's do a live session. So we're really working on how to make Montessori work for the remote situation. That's real important to us because that's who we are. And how can we do that? So it's a challenge, and we're working very hard on that challenge. Miss Erin, you can always give an update because I know you're really spearheading that for us if you want to jump in at any time. Other things too, signage. I mean, I went to 7-Eleven to get my coffee this morning. I'm checking out all their signage and their plexiglass, how they're doing things. So we'll have our own signage just as reminders. Oh, you can wash your hands. Oh, stay, a little bit more distance here, things like that. The other thing too is plexiglass. There's a lot of plexiglass. Anywhere you go, there's all kinds of plexiglass. Yes, we've ordered some. So a 4-foot round table poses a problem, but if we can divide it in half, we can have students work on each side. And really, like I said, it's between that 3 and 6 foot range. Those kids can drop their mask, get their work done, kind of be as normal. It's just now you got this plexiglass. Otherwise, a 4-foot round table causes us a problem because I'm going to put one kid at it. So rectangle tables, same thing. How can we quadrant or kind of divide those up? And so we've ordered some. We'll see if we like these. We'll probably be ordering more, but it's just another level of protection. And again, we'll all get used to it in the environment. And I didn't even think twice about it getting my coffee this morning, and I'm kind of glad they had it because the guy on the other side didn't have his mask on. So I'm glad he had it. So yes, we're adding that. And then we're going to also really kind of talk about how to rotate students through the room so that some kids get chair time, some get floor time, a little bit more movement than we're used to maybe. I've already talked about ventilation. We're trying to go touchless as much as we can. Paper towel dispensers, soap, even some of our bathroom doors, we're doing more of kind of an S entrance into the bathroom. So we're minimizing door handles. Anything that we can do that we can afford to do touchless, we will go that route. Other things just get cleaned. If they're a hard surface, it just becomes a cleaning process for us during the day as the day goes along, and definitely at night, because not only do we have our maintenance crew here during the day, we also have a full staff here to kind of clean as we go. And then we have an additional crew that comes in at night to clean, and sanitize the building each and every night. One of the shifts is a lot of the supplies stay with the student this year. So the co-mingling of, hey, there's the pencil bin with 1,000 pencils in it. No, that's gone. The marker bin, that's gone. So every kiddo just needs to have their own stuff, their own supplies. That way they can just take care of them. Again, kind of that Montessori piece of taking care of your world, cleaning your own supplies, they're yours, not being touched by someone else. And then if we wind up going into a remote situation, that tub or whatever would follow the student home. And I think if we wind up in a remote world, we're going to do a much healthier material rotation and a drop off and pick up. Before we were all scared to death. We were like, oh, can we do anything? Can we hand parents Chromebooks? So we didn't know anything about this virus back in March. Now, 5 months later, we're much wiser and less fearful as far as we can do this in a safe way, and we can pass materials back and forth to families. Even families who pick remote will have to be passing you updated materials on a regular basis, especially if we want to get that Montessori-ness in the home. Okay, so we're going to have like a sanitation area in a room. So if a child's using a material that's one of a kind, done using it, kind of goes into the sanitation zone, so to speak, where adult in the room would clean it, and then when they think it's ready, then it gets put back into rotation, because a lot of times, a lot of the stuff that we have can only be one child using it at a time anyway. So we've looked at a lot of our materials. A lot of them can be cleaned and sanitized and done in a way that is healthy for everyone, but still keeps the learning moving in the room. It'll mean a little less freedom as far as freedom of choice. Kids kind of like, oh, they have their menu, like, I think I'm going to do this. Well, if that material is not available because it might be in the sanitation area, then they have to go to something that is available. And so kids will pick that up quick. what's available, what's not available, what they can do, what they cannot do, how to make sure it's safe to use. So we're kind of creating that little zone in the room just to make sure things are done the right way. And any surface that we can get rid of, put in storage, any surface we don't have to clean is a good thing. So we're trying to go to a little sleeker, little less in the room, so that it just makes it a easier environment to maintain going forward. Aaron, Miss Aaron, have I forgotten anything? Anything you want to chime in on this? Oh, you're on mute there. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I had to find the right screen. Lots and lots of really great questions are coming in. There were some questions around cohorts and what happens when somebody in a cohort has symptoms.
Right, right.
And also, what's our plan for when cold and flu season starts and kids have cold and flu symptoms that look an awful lot like COVID symptoms?
Right, and that's a great question. Obviously, if one of the adults in the room winds up testing positive, then that cohort's got to go home at least somewhere between 10 and 14 days, probably. The trick is with kids, they don't do a ton of testing. I don't have the full answer on that, because a runny nose, is that just a runny nose, or is that linked to COVID? We really have to vet that out. And what I mean by that is we will be in contact with that family until we get some kind of doctor direction on what it is. Because yeah, kids are just going to get sick. But that's where we kind of keep going until an expert deems cold or COVID. And then we go into the quarantine protocol at that point. Obviously with adults, they got to go right away. If they show any symptoms through our screening protocol, they got to go get tested right away. Kids is going to be a little different because we can't mandate on parents to go get testing. But we do need some kind of doctor advice, expertise at that point, and then we would determine how to communicate to the family. And so yeah, that's being figured out. Remember, kids have really been out of school, and that's one of the things that, other than the little guys who've been in preschool, and then we have a few summer camps, we don't have a lot to go on how they really deem kids having COVID at this point. But as soon as a kid is sick and they fit a number of criteria, we'll probably have that parent come pick up the kiddo. Obviously, fever is the big piece. And the fever guideline is set at 100 degrees, 0.4. So 100.4. So if a kiddo has more than 100-degree temperature at home, please keep them home. If they spike that fever during the day, that's a strong possibility, and that's something that then we would use children's, because that's who we use. We'd say, look, so-and-so at 102 fever, what do you think? And so again, health experts are going to help guide us on when we, because we don't want to jump too quick, make the wrong decision, because that's not our job. We're teachers, we're educators, not health experts. So that's where we'll get that guidance on whether there's test positive or there's enough symptoms, and we get doctor advice. Okay. And what was the other? Cold and flu season. Yeah, same thing. Parents, obviously fever is one of the big indicators. Plus that's a given. Even during regular flu season, if they have probably over 100 fever, they're kind of cranky in general already, not feeling well. So yeah, we'll just keep them home more if they're over that. The list after that: runny nose, stomach ache, chills. We'll send out what children helps us send out to you of kind of the guidelines. And we'll package all that up and get that out as soon as possible, probably in in August. But yeah, we're going to be very careful about that. One of the things that we have to do down here is if a kid's running a fever, they're going to slide into the office next to me, and we're going to try to ventilate this office in some ways, so that the kiddo who fell down on the playground, got the scraped knee, can still see Christine get a Band-Aid, but isn't next to the kiddo who's going to be closer to me. I'll be, hey, how you doing? They'll be down here. So we're just, we're going to take the fever thing pretty serious. We're not going to lock them in a room or anything like that. They just can't be in the same clinic as the kid getting the Band-Aid. So that's just good practice there. And obviously the parent will be called, and the parent will come and get them as soon as they can. And then we'll go through the protocol of, is the kid just got the flu, or is a little bit more? And that'll take some time to figure that out. And again, when our health expert says, yep, that room needs quarantine, then we'll go into action, call all the parents. We're not there to shame a kid or say who had it or whatever. It's not that. It's just, sorry, your kid may have been exposed, and here's when you can return to school. So here is your remote information to jump on board, and your teacher will guide that. Anything else, Miss Erin? Oop, got you on mute.
There we go. I think that you're going to be answering a lot of the other questions at this point in the rest of the presentation about recess and power line and all that kind of stuff.
In fact, let's jump into recess. Recess, no mask, kids play, run around. Getting in line though, that's maybe where the older kids need to pop that up. Unless they can distance out enough and come into the building, we're gonna have a hand washing protocol right after playground. We're gonna section it off. So kids play on this one side on, say, on a Monday, because we run 2 classes at a time outside, and the other class can be on the other side, and then maybe the next day they can flip. I'll work that out with the staff and the assistants that run that for us. We'll figure that out. Originally we thought, man, we're going to go on this huge protocol, wiping down everything. That's really not the case. The case is good hand washing after recess. So there's no way we can clean every square inch of a playground. We will try. We will do different parts. Will probably get touched and cleaned, but especially like basketballs, anything like that, most definitely. But the maybe the swing chains, once, we'll try to clean in between recesses, but we don't have enough physical people to clean every square inch of a playground. And it really doesn't make sense, because it really comes down to not touching your face and washing your hands when you come in. And the open air, especially when we get into freezing temperatures, things like that, we would be unable to clean it anyway. So there we go. Yes, start and end. I'll jump into that later. Calendar, let's talk. We decided to jump on board with the Jeffco calendar to start on the 24th, and a lot of that reason is not only does a lot of the staff have kids in Jeffco schools, so if we were starting early, that would be a problem. And also we kind of get under their waiver, because as a school, there's a certain legal required amount of hours that we have to be open. And by pushing it back 3 days, that makes our window of hours a little tight. And last year we had to write a waiver for that because we weren't physically on the campus. But we let Jeffco do that, because yes, that's one of the perks that we get as a Jeffco school, is they do some of the heavy lifting for us in some of the areas, especially in the areas of waivers. So we push it back to the 24th for K for 6, and then we'll start preschool on the 25th. So we just wanted to give our littlest members of the school, get our kinders in, which would be about 10 per room, get them started for a day, and then get our preschoolers in the next day. And I'm even, like I said earlier, Even if districts start pushing their start dates back because of union pressure or not being ready, whatever the excuse is, as long as we have health orders that say we can be open, we really want to stick to that 24th if we can. Okay. Also, what this does for us in the calendar, and I found this to be fantastic, is we're going to take the 19th, 20th, and 21st of August, and I think the calendar's been sent out. They're green on the calendar. Miss Veronica, I will include it with the next newsletter. But we want to take those days as scheduling each family to come in, even our remote students, come and talk to your teacher, talk about, how that Chromebook's going to work, what are you going to learn remotely. We'll schedule these times to come in. We got 3 days to do it. So we're going to do a teacher meet and greet. It's a good time to drop supplies if you're an in-person learner, okay? Kind of show you how that supply management is going to work. See the classroom. What's changed? What's the same? What's the school look like? Again, we'll do these in scheduled intervals so that we can obviously not bring too many people into the building at one time. And then we're also looking at, because we got some students that are transitioning, especially our first graders who were kinders last year. They don't know their first grade teacher just yet. So we'd like to do kind of like a jumpstart session, probably on the 21st. It's still in the works, more info coming. But remember, there would be anywhere between 7 and 10 of them in a room, depending on who's remote, who's not. And we could bring that small cohort in and kind of show them around. So we're figuring out ways to do that. And then the other thing that we really need is we really need to know where our kids are at in reading. We weren't able to know our data at the end of last year. We just could not figure out how to test reliably remotely. And as a school in the state of Colorado, we're under the READ Act, and we have several kids on READ plans, and it's just good practice for us to know where kids are in their reading level so we can plan that. So we will probably be also at that time, if you're first through third, we'll do those quick dibbles tests. They take about 10 minutes at the beginning of the year. So it's a 3-test format depending on the age. And then also any kiddo on a read plan. So we have some 4th or 5th graders that, again, we just want to check. No one else will be in the room, just either mom or dad and them and the teacher, and we'll just run through that test real quick. So that'll kind of get us back on track of figuring out where the learning's at, especially after our last remote session. And so that's, to me, that's gold. That's a nice soft way to start the school year. Parents, you get eyes on the ground, you get to meet the teacher. We get back to being human again. And so we'll do the soft start, is how I like to call it. And then we'll jump in on the 24th and 25th if we can. As I said earlier, we're under a budget problem. And as a staff, we had to make some cuts. We made all the cuts we could away from the classroom. All our classrooms remain intact. We still have 17 classrooms and 2 adults in every room. Specials is still there, but we have to trim, and we have to be as frugal as we can. And if we need to be more frugal, we're going to do furlough days, and we'll do those on our in-service days. So you'll look on that calendar. There's days that kids aren't scheduled. They're off that day, and it's kind of a staff training day. And those would be our furlough days where we'll all have to kind of take pay cuts, but we're going to see if we need those or not. And 2 things really depend on that, and that is how many kids show up. We'll determine our revenue and how many kids we can count. Remote families, you're still with us, but parents who actually leave, that's what yet is to be seen. So we just have to monitor that. The pandemic has caused us to have a budget crisis, and it's probably going to be worse next year because there's a lot of special amendments here in Colorado, not only Tabor, but the Gallagher and a few others that will wind up reducing county taxes that come to schools the following year. So So we got some budget challenges, and we're trying to keep that away from impacting families on taking days away from learning. So we can do that in a way that doesn't affect you as families. So, but I just want you to know that's there, that we're not just dealing with the pandemic, we're dealing with other big rocks in our world. Yeah, this is the tough part. We have a very healthy and large before and after care and enrichment system here at MPA. I think one of the best. I love it. We're just very unclear at this time what we can offer. And the reason why is that cohort that I was talking to you about. They want to keep kids in the same group. These programs wind up mixing kids. And the only guideline I got right now, and this could change, I'm really hoping we can figure this out, is right now they say, well, I'll just keep kids in the same cohort. Well, for us, our program is so big, that would mean 17 cohorts. And then I have to have a licensed person in there to do it, which is different licensing than how we run classrooms. We couldn't, it's just not feasible. So I'm sorry, parents, that's not something I wanted to tell you, but you need to know that we're going to try to be open 5 days a week from 8 to 3. But at this time, we cannot figure out how to do before care, after care, and make it that we don't bankrupt the school. And so until I get better guidelines, and believe me, we'll keep kicking the rocks over. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, right? We'll see if that, but you should really know that in your planning going forward, what we can offer and what we can't offer. And at this time, we can't offer it. So we'll see. Maybe the world will change again. So hang in there. But I just wanted to be as transparent as I can that this is a huge dilemma for us. And we have a lot of employees that depend on that tuition and that income. And that even makes it more difficult to deal with. So hopefully I can give you some better news maybe in August. Okay? Homeschool, really their program's going to be pretty much the same. Obviously a little bit more spacing and following the health guidelines, more nature. And they're really kind of talking about even kind of offering that remote possibility as well. Families really kind of want to back off from the in-person, but still stay in our MPA homeschool program. There's some ways to do that. And then Miss Jana and her crew are looking at ways to even make second semester even more exciting, just to break up the COVID year a little bit. So hang in there. You'll hear from that crew, but really since it's a different program and how those numbers run and how they're done on certain days, that program really has very few impacts other than the health guidelines. So there you go. Volunteering and school tours. Yeah, no bueno. Yeah, at this time, no volunteers. And we have one of the biggest volunteer systems here and group of parents I've ever seen. And it's just not in the cards at this time because of, again, that cohort. When we're consistent, we know who's who, and we know they're here every day, we can get by with opening schools, but exposing random people in the building, all that's on hold till further notice. I did ask the question, what about outdoor volunteering? I got to know at this point, but I'm working on it, especially if we get some nature walks going, things like that. So stay tuned on that. But yeah, at this point, we just really got to run the tight ship for everybody involved and just keep the staff and the students as cohorts. Hey, fresh outdoor picture. Again, we're just trying to take these breaks, get outside, get that open air, maybe sit down, listen to a story outside. We're developing kind of these bark areas out here and some shade trees, and you can see those stumps. I've already had Miss Lucinda runs our pollinator program or gardening program. We had a meeting out there on the stumps. It was fabulous. It's like 98 degrees outside. We're sitting in the shade. It was great. I needed water after an hour, but it was nice to sit out there. So yeah, we're slowly developing ways to get outside around this beautiful campus we have. I think I missed a few things here. Let me go back here. I really wanted to talk about start and end. I can't find the slide. We're going to have a staggered start, parents. So 7:50 to 8 o'clock, we're going to split you in half. I mean alphabetically, okay? So something from like A to M, families with the last name A to M. Miss Veronica will figure it out for us. So we'll do like 7:50 to 8, and then N to Z can be 8 to 8:10. That's at the beginning of the day. That's just good practice. Keep less cars. Most parents seem to come at a fairly regular time because, I'm always out front in the mornings. And there was kind of definitely a pattern to it. Mr. Brandon was always out front in the mornings. Parents, once they kind of get dialed in, you're within a minute or two, you're pretty good. You're pretty good. So we just want to stagger that start. But at the end of the day, I think we can do a full end because we have the beauty of a really big pull-through system here, our loop. So one thing that we can't do at the end of the day is we can't have siblings go join other siblings like we did. We would send the older kids over here to primary. We can't do that. They just got to stay in their cohort. So what we're going to do is we'll have preschoolers picked up at their classrooms. We'll have kinders out front. We're going to have lower in this curved part of the loop. And then we're going to do upper. We're actually going to take over the staff parking lot there to the east, kind of to the northeast over here. Since we're buying the church across the street, we're going to have staff park over there, me included. I'll be parking over there. And then we can have upper spread themselves out on that side of the loop. So parents, if you got 3 siblings, sorry, you're going to have to stop 3 times, but it should flow pretty good. So if those families that might have a kinder, a second, and a fifth, you'll have to swing in over here into primary, pick up your kinder, and then Mr. Todd, who's probably running traffic control out here, will get you into the loop. And then you pick up your lower student, and then on the way out, you pick your 5th grader up. That's way better than a staggered end. That would be tough because 40% of our families have multiple kids here. And all it takes is a couple parents to be late and on a staggered end, and it's a mess. So we have enough room. We have the luxury of room and space here. And I think that plan will work until someone proves me wrong. Okay. So what else we got, Miss Erin?
Let me see. I think you actually answered a fair number of them.
Okay.
They were coming in like right before you answered them. So good job organizing.
That's right.
Let's see. School counts, we answered that. You answered Carling questions. There were questions around, there were several questions around moving back and forth between remote and in-person learning, and if that was a choice and what that would look like.
Well, that is something that I'll be talking to our board about. If we have health policy that clears us to be open and in person, some charter schools are deciding to go remote. But I can tell you after talking with our staff, yes, we're nervous. We're nervous as a staff. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. We're nervous. Will these health protocols protect me? Are they good for kids? But we really want to be back in the building. Unless I, the staff, really start to feel a lot of reservations about things, that's really up to our MPA board to decide that. If they want to do a different plan other than what health policy is saying. Again, we can't supersede health policy. We just can't go rogue, can't do our own thing. We have to follow the guidelines. We are tax-paid public servants. And so I know parents, you might have some strong opinions on stuff. And, you know, there's just a certain degree of flexibility that we have and a certain degree of not. And so remote might be best if you really feel strongly about what policies I explained tonight. But I will talk to the board, but they're with me. We're Montessori. This is hands-on learning.
I don't think I didn't ask the question well. I'm sorry. It was like if a family starts the beginning of the year in the building and then they're like, no, this isn't going to work for us. We need to go to remote for whatever reason. Well, what does that look like?
Two things. Thank you for reminding me. Like I said, we're in cohorts, right? So if a family's like starts with us and says, I'm not sure about that in-person learning, you can go remote at any time. But here's the catch. You got to stay in remote to certain intervals, okay? We're kind of looking at by quarter. Again, I'm going to get maybe a little bit clearer policy, not only from other schools, but I'll talk to my own board here. But we can't have people coming back and forth to these cohorts, okay? So if you're going to start the year in remote learning with us, you need to stay in remote learning until parent-teacher conferences. That's about third week of October. The next window of joining a cohort would be after Christmas break, okay? As long as you can answer the questions. You know, we haven't been to New York City, we didn't fly internationally, you know, things like that, so that we know haven't done a lot of high risk traveling. The other thing, and then would be like spring break in March, okay? So we kind of have 3 windows of time that look like you could jump in and join a cohort, but you can leave in-person learning at any time. It's just you can't jump back in until those times. So there's windows both ways for families to figure it out. But we have to maintain the health of that cohort, and we got to minimize the number of people coming and going. Does that help? I think that was the one, and that's the one I didn't build a slide around. I apologize, parents. That is a big deal. I just want to say a little sheepish on that because that's some policies that I need to talk to the board more about. So I'm kind of giving these as general guidelines. And then we'll take a firmer stance on things as I work with the board and as we get better information on whether other schools are doing.
A couple of people ask if you could go through the staggered start one more time.
You bet.
And also, how does that going to work with carpooling families? If we have like families carpooling and one is in the first drop and the other is in the second.
Well, we'll have to make an exception. Here's what we'll do. Okay, let me just recap real quick. 7:50 to 8 o'clock, we're going to have half our families come. Okay, just preschool to 6, right? The other half from 8 o'clock to 8:10. However we split that, Miss Veronica will help me figure that out. We'll communicate that out, probably just alphabetically. Okay. There's exceptions to every rule. Call Miss Veronica and we'll just figure it out. We'll just plug it in. We're not talking everyone's going to do that, but there's families that carpool. I get it. I'm not worried. We'll just figure that out. Okay. Because we don't want you waiting. You know, doesn't make any sense. What else you got, Miss Erin?
There's a lot of questions about how teachers are going to be able to balance teaching remotely and in the classroom at the same time. I don't know where we're at with
that's
ready to answer that.
That's a loaded one, especially with the staff. Obviously, I want some dedicated remote people. To have asking a teacher to be open 5 days a week from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock to do in-person and remote. There's no way to do that, okay? Those parents who've been in our classrooms and you might have volunteered, you see the demands in the room. Doesn't mean they can't check in on kids, they can't do other things remotely, but to really run a remote system, I need to have a couple of staff members supporting that. Or we have to modify our 5-day schedule. I pitched this idea of modifying our 5-day schedule to the staff, got mixed results today. I will talk with the board at our board retreat coming up, but I think we just have to figure out budgetarily how to have a couple of expert teachers run a remote and then have students check in with their teachers and assistants at regular scheduled times, and but have someone behind the scenes to help students when they need help, and parents when they need help in the remote situation. So we just got to work it out. You know, I have a staff member that would jump at doing that. I just got to find the money to do it. And so again, parents, I need you to make a choice as soon as possible with that survey Miss Veronica sent out. We think we only have 30 kids doing remote, and then here comes August 24th and we got 90. I can't flip that around that quick to figure out how to staff that properly. 90 kids and 1 or 2 staff members, that's too many to even handle and do a quality job. So I know it's scary. I know it's hard, but at some point, if you don't select in the survey that Ms. Veronica sent out, we'll probably be calling you and just kind of working through it, because that helps us decide where to put our money and our practices and our staff to support in-person and remote. I really don't want to modify the schedule if we can, but that's a great question, and it's a dilemma I'm dealing with every day is how do teachers do double duty? So we have some ideas. I think we're going to have to do this remote kind of virtual town hall maybe sometime in August again. I'll be pumping out regular newsletters. Maybe I can answer a lot of these questions in that going forward, and instead of taking 1 or 2 hours in the evening, we'll see. Any major announcements, obviously a town hall. But yeah, we'll get that figured out.
A couple of people have asked when they need to decide by, in terms of whether they're going to be remote. When do they need to make their final decision?
Parents, I'd love by next week, end of next week, which is really the end of July. Because once we're into August, staff's coming on August 12th. Parents, you're going to start knowing who your teacher is here pretty soon. Ms. Veronica will be pushing that out here before the end of the month. And we got to start getting ready for school. So yeah, if you have more questions, again, this week I'm pretty busy in administrative and all kinds of health Zooms and things like that. But next week I can definitely work with people who are on the fence. And that way I might, or a staff member might help you make a decision one way or the other. And then we can kind of plan for those ratios and those numbers. So yeah, we got a little bit of time.
Okay, to confirm, the survey is where they make their decision, correct?
Yeah, it's the one from Miss Veronica. We'll make I think her and I are doing a newsletter this week, so we'll try to re-include that in the newsletter if it got lost or pushed to the bottom of your email. Okay.
And then let's see. Some need to know how to notify us of their remote. So that's answered. You use the survey.
Yeah, use the survey. Right. We'll push the link back out.
Heather's doing a great job of answering questions about library. Thank you, Heather. There's a request that we figure out, have a better answer on aftercare as soon as possible, because that affects parents or families' decisions about whether to be remote or in person.
Okay. All right. Yeah, wish I had that. We'll work on that. Still are. While you're thinking or looking at it real quick, still doing specials. We're just going to do them a little different. Art will be in art, PE, probably a lot of PE outside at different times. Music's the problem. Mr. Tyler's music room is one of the smallest rooms we have in the building. It's only 625 square feet. He's going to have to do a push-in model. He's going to have to bring music to the room. So that's where we're at right now. Seems to be a pretty good schedule. Kids still get all their specials. Art room, PE are some of our biggest rooms. It was a shame not to use those rooms, so I was glad the guidelines changed on that because we figured out how to do a cleaning protocol in between each group. So that's exciting. Kids get to come back and have specials and have those 3 very talented people break up their day, have fun, learn different things, gives teachers plan time. So I'm glad that we can offer. It will look and feel pretty close to the same to kids. It's a little shift on the groupings that we're going to put in specials at those times, but everyone gets to be involved. So it's excellent.
Can you do just a quick summary of why we opted not to do hybrid again? I know that was at the very beginning, but.
Yeah, hybrid, the alternating, first of all, we could only do 2 days a week because the way our class sizes are built, or even maybe once a week. It was really a tough model for us because we have classes of 25 to 28. And it was hard to get lower numbers in at that time. We were under this 10-to-1 guideline. If we did full group coming in, but only 2, we could, if we had alternated days, maybe split the class in half or something like that. Really what it means though is you got 2 different groups exposing the teacher. Okay, this group is off doing this on their days off. This group's off doing this on their days off, but yet they're coming to these adults in the room. Health experts say that's actually a worse model than just having 5-day-a-week, same crew. Okay, same group, same cohort. I kind of agree because parents, you're like, I got this kid home 3 days a week. You're going to be taking them out. You're going to be going to grocery stores, things like that. Versus when they're in school, they're in school. That's a safe environment than lots of different exposures to other environments. That keeps teachers safe, keeps the cohort safe. So it just lessens transmission because if you're not in school, you're out doing something else. Okay, that's the reason. Make school school. If we can get open at 5 days a week, be consistent. Teachers get to know the health of kids. Like, he didn't look so good on Wednesday. Let me call the parent. Ooh, sick on Thursday. You just get to know the rhythm of kids by seeing them 5 days versus if you only saw them every other day or every other week, we're just out of sync. We're not connected as a group. And that's how you mitigate health problems is you get to know symptoms of each other, just like in families. You know how your kid's feeling. Okay, teachers same way. They know how their kids are feeling. So that's a better model than just a different group every day. Even health experts are like, wow, that's just mixing it up. So I'm going to have to go on that advice, even though some districts or some schools are going on the hybrid model.
Will parent guidelines include how to contact trace? How do we help mitigate external school factors?
I'm thinking external school factors like kids going to sports, or what do you think they're meaning there, Miss Erin?
I am not sure.
Yeah, a lot of that's out of our control. What we can push out are kind of the symptom screenings. Like I said, if parents are able to self-screen their kiddos, what's that guideline? What's that tool? We're actually looking at a couple of different ways to do that. One might be on a phone or something. Hey, my kid, boom, boom, boom. It's one way we're looking at it, or just, here's the checklist. And if you're dropping them off here, we accept that you did the checklist. If we start closing we try the self-screening and it doesn't work, and we're starting to move classes into self-quarantine, things like that, it's just not working for us, we'll probably have to go to health screenings out front, just as more of a control measure. So we'll see. Children's will guide us to the best guidelines, and then we'll push that information out to families.
A parent, great question. They're all great questions, but can parents volunteer to help with online learning?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. That's a good question. At this point, I think if we did do that, we would have to have parents of the kiddos on the other end sign a waiver that would say, yes, so-and-so is the volunteer, they can work with my kiddo. It's even difficult for teachers. Obviously, you heard me when I said if we stream anything from a classroom, we can't show the kids, right? We try to limit that as much as we can. It's really about the teacher and the learning. So if we have a volunteer running that, it's kind of the same problem as they're not an employee of the school, for one, so we would have some kind of permission system that could maybe work with small groups, things like that. So I'll look into that. That's a great question. I don't have the answer on that, but I think that's possible.
Couple of questions around what do we do during that chunk of time when somebody has symptoms and we're waiting for their test results to come back?
Well, again, we don't know if a kid just has a runny nose or has COVID. Life goes on. Until a medical expert deems this, we're still teaching. We're still offering school. It really depends on the timing too. So if it's on a Monday, we want to expedite that decision versus on a Friday where we have a weekend in front of us. But yeah, we have to rely on the medical protocols, and we're still waiting to receive those, but it's really about contact tracing. Oh, so-and-so, here's the information that gets reviewed by a medical expert, and they push us in which direction the family and the school needs to go.
And if I miss a question for us to get it answered now, I am putting them all on a Google Doc. So if we miss something here, we will get them answered later.
Right, like I said, we'll start more of a regular newsletter on our Thursdays coming up. I can answer some of those as we go along in newsletters and push a lot of that out. Like I said, we might have to do this again in August. We'll see how the world goes. So I don't have a date for that yet. I just want to see how much is going to change in the next 2 weeks. But I think we have a fairly solid plan, parents. It really comes down to, what do you think? Do you think there's enough trust in us that we can deliver this as safe as we can? And I wish I could give you real specific details on every single minute of the day, and that's just not real. You've been out in the world, you've seen how things kind of work. Schools have a big challenge. We have to figure it out when we open the doors. There's a lot of unknowns. You can only plan so much, and then you open the doors and go, oh, forgot about that. That's how it's going to go. But I can guarantee you that we will learn as we go, and we'll make it better. I can't guarantee 100% that my staff or your son or daughter doesn't get sick. I can't do that, but I can guarantee you that we'll put the best process forward, because that's who we are. I think we can do this with more grace and courtesy than any other school because it's in our nature here. How can we take things like mass and deal with it in a healthier way? I grew up before seatbelts were mandated. I remember hitting my head on the dash. I'm a big proponent of seatbelts, even to this day. There's just some people still won't wear them to this day. I'm not here to change your mind, parents. I'm just here to give you information. Same thing with speed limit laws. That didn't come in until the oil embargo, but now we all follow speed limit laws. It's the same thing. The minute you get in your car and you step out on Kipling, and you're driving down Kipling, you agree to all the traffic laws under the state of Colorado and the federal government. Same thing with schools. If you're going to come into the school, you have to understand, we'll do our best to treat your child with the utmost respect and in the safest way. I can't give you every detail, but we'll surely work on it tenaciously as a staff. So it's the same thing with flying. I remember the moment 9/11 hit, where I was, what I was doing, and what I was doing with in helping parents with that morning. And I still get my bag checked at the airport. It's just part of life. And that's the way I look at this process. It's a way of life for now. And we're going to make it as joyful as we can. And keep asking the tough questions. I appreciate it. Makes us better. So what I can answer, I will push out into a newsletter or another town hall as soon as possible.
So it sounds like we'll be getting more information on some of the more technical medical questions closer to when school starts, and we'll get those answered to the best of our ability.
We really got to take that advice from children's. And so we'll get that packaged up and out to parents as soon as we can. But like I said, parents, there's flexibility in how we handle it. So I hope you saw that. You can go back, rewind this, pause it on certain slides, and develop even a better question if you want to. So again, take the information, make the best choice for your family, and we support either decision that you make.
And I think you said this, but just as a reminder, where would you like people, if they have questions, to email their questions to?
You can email them to me. Okay. So brian.berg at jeffco.k12.co.us. It's on our website, so feel free. A lot of times when I send out emails and reminders in which, I got another story coming. So when I send that story out this week, you'll see my email address. And a lot of parents just email me back a question from my story. And it has nothing to do with the story, but it's a good question about school. And so that's a way to do it without having to go and search for that. So that I should have a story out by Friday. And so if you got a good question, I'll be happy to answer it. Just give me a little bit of time. Please understand that these are some Mr. Toad's Wild Rides going on right now, all the Zooms and everything. So all these things are popping out, but we'll get there. We will get there because we're going to do it together.
I think I hit all of the question categories. If I miss something, like I said, I'll go back through them and make sure, and then I can make sure that they get to Brian and Amy for clarification and answering through the newsletters or however they choose to do that.
Okay. Well, I just want everybody to know I'm super grateful for where we're at. I know I didn't cover these two slides. I hope you're reading them, but we've been working over the summer. We've been working on how to be the best Montessori school we can, and a lot of team meetings and best practices. And parents, you can always take your concerns up the food chain, so to speak, things like that. Again, we are stewards. We can only follow what we're given as guidelines, and we'll do our best to interpret that. But most of all, we want to do it with grace and courtesy. We want to be in an environment, whether it's remote or in person, that honors the child, and that's who we are. So thanks for joining us. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate the support. Miss Erin, thank you. Staff, parents,